From the shadows to the light, with units giving fright, these teams are certainly strong. Don't worry, this intro isn't that long. Hey guys, welcome to another Teamfight Tactics video. Set 2 introduces some crazy new things. We've got some powerful compositions to show you, going over what champions they run, the strengths and weaknesses it faces, and what ideal carry you want to run in those teams. So let's begin. But first, I'd like to remind you to click on the link below and take a look at the updated ProGuides.com if you want to learn more about Teamfight Tactics. ProGuides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources from top players to help you be the best player you can be. So be sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description. Alright, let's get right back into the video. Beginning with 5th place, we have Light Mystics. This team is insanely strong, being absurd in combination with Yorick, and every light unit benefiting from attack speed. You can also use Talisman of Light to give insane attack speed to any carry, like Olaf, Twitch, or even Brant. Light Mystics is a strong team with crazy sustain. Core units are Vayne, Jax, Aatrox, Soraka, Yorick, Janna, and Nasus. This gives you 6 lights, 2 mystics, each light unit giving other light units attack speed and health. You can also fit in a Yasuo for 2 wind, 2 BLADEMASTER, Olaf and Dr. Mundo for Berserker, Malphite for Wardens, and many different synergies. This composition has an insanely powerful mid and late game, but comes with its own risks. These are Light Mystic's main strengths: insane strength in extended fights. This composition excels as the fight goes on. Once some units die, you're already providing a huge attack speed buff to all of your light units. Every light unit scales somewhat decently with the attack speed buff and healing. The longer the fight, the better it usually is for lights. Cheap units. With the team using Vayne, Nasus, and Jax early on, 3 lights is pretty easy to get. Compared to most teams, 6 lights is a lot cheaper and usually won't hurt your economy by going for it, unless you're going for multiple 3 stars. These are Light Mystic's main weaknesses. Weak to Grievous Wounds. With the core part of this composition based around healing, Grievous Wounds can be painful. It's not the end of the world though, as the attack speed buff still remains, but Grievous Wounds can be a pretty significant weakness in this composition. This team is inconsistent. It's risky to depend on Yorick to survive the mid-game, and it also depends on units dying, which can lead to insane attack speed buffs on your Soraka? Yeah, underwhelming. It only truly excels when you have a Talisman of Light to apply buffs onto a champion that greatly synergizes with the attack speed, like Twitch or Olaf, which is why it's only in 5th place. In 4th place, we have Berserker Glacial Desert. This team purely focuses around Olaf as a carry, but has strong Berserkers alongside as well. It is a generally strong team that has a lot of options, cheap to build, and fairly consistent as long as Olaf comes along. It's a fairly tanky comp, can sustain through a lot, and overall just difficult to kill. Its core units are Jax, Volibear, Dr. Mundo, Sion, Olaf, Renekton, Sivir. This gives you 2 Glacial, 6 Berserker, 2 Desert. Towards late game, you can also aim for Master Yi and Janna for 2 Shadow, 2 BLADEMASTER, and 2 Mystics. Glacial and Desert makes Olaf dish out a ton of damage while consistently applying AoE cleaves that can stun. These are Berserker Glacial Desert's main strengths. Easy to build. This team is extremely easy to build, with the only 4-cost unit being Olaf. Unlike Lights, Berserkers are powerful units as the game goes on. Renekton being a fantastic early Berserker, Jax, Dr. Mundo, Sion, and Volibear being strong in the mid-game too. This composition excels at being easy and simple. Item Adaptability. This composition is stupidly strong with a ton of items. Hand of Justice, Hush, Red Buff, Bloodthirster, Rageblade, Swordbreaker, Phantom Dancer, basically any on-hit, sustain, or AD items. With many items being fairly viable on Olaf and generally everyone else, you don't typically have to worry about getting the same 3 items every game. Powerful mid-game. This is an extremely strong top 4 team, helping you outlast many people through the mid-game because of its cheaper units and simple items. These are Berserker Glacial Desert's main weaknesses. Outscaled in the late game. Running some units like Renekton or Volibear who scale poorly into the late game can be difficult. While yes, at level 9 you can fit in 2 units to adapt your composition accordingly, like Mystic, Ocean, Warden, 4 Desert, and so on. However, as we've said, this is a good top 4 composition. It's not that great at hitting number 1. Grievous Wounds are a pain. Morrocrux, Singed, or even a Kindred can make this composition a lot worse. Dr. Mundo and Olaf specifically play around Lifesteal and Spell Vamp. There aren't many ways to play around Grievous Wounds except for getting more damage and lifesteal. In 3rd place, we have Poison Ranger Berserkers. This team front-loads a ton of physical damage to destroy enemies while poisoning them with Singed to not only burn them but stalling their abilities as well. This team mostly plays around Singed, Twitch, and Olaf, a dynamic trio of pure violence and death. The core units of this composition is Kindred, Ezreal, Ashe, Twitch, Olaf, Sion, Dr. Mundo, and Singed. This gives you 4 Rangers, 3 Poison, 3 Berserker, 2 Shadow, 2 Glacial. 6 Rangers is unnecessary since it isn't quite worth it to run Vayne or Varus in the late game, in comparison to 3 Berserkers, 2 Shadows, and 2 Glacial with Olaf and Sion. Ezreal is better than Varus in this case since Olaf in combination with Glacial provides AoE stuns as well. These are Poison Rangers Berserker's main strengths. A very well-rounded composition. This team is strong against a lot of things and is both equally very tanky and deals a lot of damage. Olaf, Sion, Singed, and Dr. Mundo hold a very strong frontline, while Ezreal, Kindred, Ashe, and Twitch do a lot of damage. Olaf can also be made as a makeshift carry, and Singed can use MorrellAnomicon to become a magic damage carry as well. Strong against most late-game compositions. While units like Lex, Nami, or Zed have insanely high mana pools, Poison can easily win you the game in these kinds of fights, especially when their ultimates are extremely important. Item adaptability. Olaf, Singed, Twitch, and Kindred all work as a great carry. MorrellAnomicon can be used on Singed. Lifesteal and pure attack speed works great on Olaf. Crit and Runans works best on Twitch. You can also build defensively with Phantom Dancer to handle assassins as well. This gives you a lot of options in terms of what items you get. These are Poison Rangers Berserker's main weaknesses. Wardens. Yep, Wardens counter this composition extremely hard. It makes sense in general. What counters a ton of physical damage? Probably the synergy that has a ton of armor. Due to how common Warden is and how easy it is to slot in, it can be really problematic when fighting against players who know to adapt to it to counter you. It also isn't that easy to fit in Desert in this composition either. Inconsistent build. With Singed, Olaf, and Twitch being necessary, this team can be relatively inconsistent to go for unless given to you. Kog'Maw can replace Singed, but the team already has enough front-loaded damage. If Twitch or Olaf isn't upgraded either, then you lose out a lot of damage and most likely going to die quickly. Expensive. This team is extremely expensive, being 1 5 cost, 3 4 cost, and 4 3 cost. While it is an extremely optimal composition in the late game, if you aren't rolling it that well, it can cost a lot to get going. In second place, we have Desert Blademaster's Assassins. This combines Kha'Zix and Desert to form a powerful burst team, focusing around his high carry potential. Kha'Zix easily deals out tons of damage with the right items, constantly catching out low health units and critting for a lot in general. This composition is extremely aggressive, being a lot more squishy than other comps, so don't forget to run a few defensive items on your carries. The ideal units are Kha'Zix, Sivir, Azir, Renekton, Aatrox, Nocturne, Qiyana. This gives you 4 Desert, 2 Blademasters, 3 Assassins. As you progress throughout the game, you can look to get Yasuo and Master Yi for 4 Blademasters, Janna and Nami for Mystics, or Taric and Malphite for 2 Warden and possibly 2 Mountain, depending on Qiyana's element. These are Desert Blademaster Assassin's main strengths. High burst and DPS. This composition has Aatrox, Kha'Zix, Qiyana to provide some burst, along with Azir, Sivir, and Nocturne to provide some damage over time. Desert only further amplifies Sivir's and the Assassin's damage, making this threatening to any composition. Counters Wardens. Wardens are usually problematic for Assassins, being big tanky boys with a ton of armor. It might not be as annoying as League's tank meta, but it's definitely difficult to go through. However, 4 Desert completely eliminates them as a counter, reducing their armor by an insane amount. Adaptability and accessibility. This composition excels because of how many options it provides. With only Kha'Zix and Sivir as your main core, you can play around with different synergies. Maybe you only need 2 Desert due to a lack of Wardens. You could run Master Yi, Aatrox, Janna, and Yasuo for 2 Wind, 4 Blademaster. You can run Olaf, Renekton, Sion, and Master Yi to get 2 Blademaster, 2 Shadow, 3 Berserker. There are a lot of options to aim for, and all of them being equally strong. These are Desert Blademaster Assassin's main weaknesses. Kha'Zix. While he is the core strength of the build, he is also one of its biggest weaknesses. A lot of damage output depends on Kha'Zix, and if he ults to a dead person or positions poorly to get focused down, then it becomes a lot harder to win fights, though it is still possible. Squishy. Kha'Zix, Aatrox, and everyone else aren't really known for their ability to tank. This composition is fairly consistent, but is prone to failure. This requires you to have at least above average health whenever you go for this team. Even if you adapt to have Warden Mountain Berserker variant, it's still a lot squishier than a Summoner or Warden Mystics composition. Weak AoE. This composition gets heavily countered by Summoners specifically. Aatrox's small bursts, Sivir's ricochet, and that's about it. Crazy, right? You don't have much AoE. Berserker variant can provide a bit of AoE, but it's still weak compared to mages, for example. This composition has a lot of single target burst damage and can be easily overwhelmed by a lot of Zeds or Voidlings. For our first place, we have Shadow Inferno Summoners. With Malzahar and Kindred being insanely strong units at the moment, combining them together into one powerful composition would seem like the best option. This team is incredibly hard to kill with the health provided by summons. Not only that, but the damage backed up is insane. Kindred, while they might not be a summoner, they still provide Shadow and Inferno, both synergizing well with his team overall. The core units for this composition are Malzahar, Annie, Zyra, Kindred, Yorick, Sion, Master Yi, Azir, and Zed. This team gives you 4 Shadows, 3 Infernals, and 6 Summoners. This is an extremely aggressive composition, cramming a lot of damage synergies together. If positioned properly, it isn't squishy either, with Malzahar, Annie, Yorick, Sion, and Zed providing some tank to the composition. Rather than 6 Summoners, you can also run Ocean Mystics with Master Yi, Nami, and Nautilus over Zed, Yorick, and Azir. This team gives you 4 Shadows, 3 Infernals, 3 Summoners, 2 Ocean, and 2 Mystics. This team is better at playing as safe as possible, focusing on grinding down teams, with Ocean providing mana and Mystics providing magic resistance to your carries. At the same time, Infernals and Shadows can still provide a lot of damage. These are Shadow Infernal Summoners' main strengths. Shadow and Inferno are aggressive synergies, Shadow providing an insane damage buff to all Shadow units, making Malzahar and Kindred particularly a lot stronger. Inferno also makes Zyra and Annie a lot more terrifying to face as well, with every ability damage creating a burning tile. Difficult to burn through. With there being not too much AoE in the game, limited to units like Singed, Nami, or Lux, this composition can be extremely difficult to outpace. 3 Summoners alone can be difficult to go through, but if you're using 6, then every Summoner becomes its own problem health-wise. Strong units overall. Usually, compositions will have a weak unit to sacrifice, but every unit in Shadow's Summoners are strong, all dealing decent damage and providing their own benefits to the table, like Sion with crowd control and tank, Master Yi providing mystics, and so on. These are Shadow Infernal Summoners' main weaknesses. Weak to silence and poison. This composition struggles heavily against silences because everyone on the team depends on spellcasting. Without their abilities, they are made essentially useless, having only Kindred as a potential physical damage carry. Poison is another counter, with units having insanely large mana pools like Malzahar, Azir, or Zed. It's similar to Silence where it negates ability casting, but only more as a stall rather than completely shutting it down. 6 Summoners can be difficult to hit. 6 Summoners is one of the bigger power spikes of the composition. However, it's not always possible due to Zed being popular and a 5 cost, and Annie and Yorick being 4 costs. This means very frequently you'll find yourself going 3 Summoners rather than 6, which might lose you the game sometimes. A very popular composition. This is a huge weakness, especially with the nerfs to champion pools overall. Always scout as you build this composition because it's a lot more likely for you to lose if too many people are taking your units. And that's it for our top 5 meta compositions. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, utilizing their own carries and synergies. We hope you guys use these compositions in your own games. What is your favorite team to run? Do you agree with our tier list? Comment down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time.